Welcome to the SCI Coffee Conversations. This is a series to mark our 20th anniversary. And in these conversations, we will be catching up with people who have been an important part of the SCI story over the years. So excited to get this going. And our first guest is Roger Wong, who is really a trailblazer with SCI. He was the very first person to serve as an AmeriCorps member with SCI. And when he joined the SCI team, he basically doubled our team at the office because I was solo and lonely in the first several months of the organization. We had a lot of partners and volunteers. But when I went back to the office, I was by myself until joined by Roger. So excited to have you here, Roger. So good morning here. And I know it's evening where you are. So
Yes,
exactly.
good evening here from Hong Kong, and I'm so excited to be on this coffee chat with you, David. It's been a long time since we've connected, and my memories of SCI is still very vivid. So I'm so excited you thought of me and you invited me on. So looking forward to it.
Excellent. Well, we have a light question to start the conversation. We are calling this Coffee Conversations because part of starting the organization involved a lot of informal chats with folks over coffee to bounce ideas off and get people involved as partners. So let me ask you, Roger, what is your favorite morning drink to help get your day started?
The proper answer is probably a cup of coffee, but I actually don't really drink coffee. So I start off my day with a cup of warm water every day because 60% of the body is made out of water. And we need
Hey,
water.
that's a creative answer. We don't want everybody coming on this and just saying that would be kind of boring. Warm water. Okay.
Right.
That's very
Right.
cool. Is that a long time thing or something you picked up in your
Yeah,
travel?
I've been drinking water in the morning for as long as I can remember. I do like coffee. I mean, don't get me wrong, but I like coffee ice cream, and I like
Oh,
the
yum.
smell of coffee better than I like the taste of coffee.
Gotcha. I was that way for a long time too. And then actually I was traveling in Italy and somehow the
Oh,
coffee over there got me going from just liking the smell to getting into the taste. So, but
anything in
anyway,
Italy tastes good. Anything.
exactly. So anyway, we're not here just to talk about coffee and other beverages and food, but to talk about your experience and memories of SCI and things you've done since then. So I wanted to start by saying, as I said, you were the first one to
Yeah.
join as an SCI AmeriCorps member, and I know I was excited to have a colleague to work with at the office. But I want to know from you, remind me what motivated you to join SCI as an AmeriCorps member back in the day a long time ago.
Sure, I have to go back into my memory bank thing to pull up some of these memories, but I do remember. So I think I was the first employee you hired, David, right? And then
Yeah.
so yeah, doubled in size. I do remember our office there in Woburn. Um, I think for me, before AmeriCorps, I had spent a little over a year and a half or so in Colorado. So at the time I was working as a consulting valuation analyst for a hospitality consulting firm. So that's sort of what I had studied in college. So I spent really the first year in Colorado crunching numbers, writing a lot of reports. It was great work, but then, um, you know, right at about the time when I started that job, actually, September 11th happened.
Hmm.
So, at that time, I had sort of already accepted this job and I couldn't really back out, but I honestly, I really wasn't in the right state of mind. And now that in hindsight, looking back at the decisions I made, to start this job, but I went ahead anyways, spent a year in Colorado doing it. And then I would say after about a year or so, I sort of just realized, uh, I need to do something different. I felt like I was being told to do something bigger, more meaningful, more purposeful. I didn't, to be honest, I did not exactly know what I wanted to do next, but I knew Colorado wasn't it. The current firm I was at wasn't it. Um, so I think I just hopped on the internet and just looked up some stuff. I wanted to spend a little bit of time actually at home also because I felt like I needed it. And also I just wasn't too sure what I wanted to do. And I think, sort of one thing led to another. I saw an opportunity through the AmeriCorps Promise Fellowship in Massachusetts. Um, Real attractive at first. It was just, learning more about what it meant to be in national or public service. So I read up a little bit more about that, and then just saw the different uh, the different opportunities within that job scope. So I had applied for, I think, um, a couple of other different posts within the fellowship, and I ended up choosing social capital because it was, close to my family. It was close to where I grew up. I thought that's where I could probably provide the most value.
Mhm.
But honestly, I knew really nothing about the nonprofit sector. I really knew nothing about SCI. I knew really nothing about AmeriCorps. I went into this with a very open mind, with a ton of questions. I think I probably made quite a few mistakes, in the early months of my time at SCI, but I learned so much there from David, from the team eventually, but just from the work. And I remember, working and managing the Youth Leadership Council in Woburn,
Yeah.
which is a big part of my job then, planning, some of the citywide civic engagement activities. I still remember them.
Mhm.
We organized like a student-led mayoral debate,
Yes, I remember that. Yeah.
civil rights oral history project, the youth
Mhm.
adult dialogues. All these are still very vivid in my mind. So, but thinking back about that experience, I mean, I learned so much from my time as an AmeriCorps fellow, and from really my first foray into the nonprofit sector. But I think at the end, I realized, the impact that, people can make
Mhm.
a day-to-day basis. I think that was really powerful. So I
Yeah.
still, yeah,
That's great. That's a great. You're telling that story reminds me of several things. But one thing I wanted to lift out from what you said first is the what you said about kind of you're starting to do one job, but then kind of we're searching for something different, maybe something
mm,
maybe a little more meaningful. It's interesting. That is still, I think, a common reason people sign up for AmeriCorps.
yeah,
Looking for that. And we do have some people that do it right out of college, but we do have a lot of folks like yourself that maybe it's not the very first thing. They do that first thing and they're like, this isn't really for me. And then AmeriCorps becomes a great place to spend a year and say, hey, let me try this. I'm going to make a difference for sure. And then, I can also explore, what I might want to do after that. So
yeah,
cool. You kind of jumped to something I was going to ask you anyway, but maybe you could go a little deeper in terms of you do those projects you rattle off are very, very much I resonate, and I remember. And if we're not doing them all in the exact same format, definitely the kinds of things you worked on are still part of our core programming. But any of those examples of things you remember that you want to talk a little bit more about what you remember about it and what kind of impact you felt you had by doing that project?
yeah. I mean, I learned a little bit from each project that we worked on, like from the mayoral debate to like the mini grants program. I think that's the parts that I took away from essay was that I felt like I was able to learn a little bit about everything because
Yeah.
of the range of projects I worked on. I thought one thing that was really powerful was you know, engaging young people
Hmm.
in the process of change making.
Yeah.
So um, getting their feedback, their input, their leadership, from the start, like all the way to the end, and really letting them make the decisions, letting them really drive the process. I mean, that was really powerful. I think uh, before working at SCI, I really thought, hey, a lot of the decisions were being made by adults, and they were just kind of decisions were made for the young people. The young people were just kind of following orders or instructions or being taught. But then, I think working side by side with the Youth Leadership Council really taught me that young people, if given the right support, the right resources, and the right opportunities, they can really take an active leadership role in the community, and they can really have an impact, and they have an important voice. So recognizing that and giving them that space to create is really powerful. I think the youth adult dialogues was a perfect example of that, where the young people and the adult got to do some community mapping projects side by side with one another, and just really mapping out what their vision of the community should look like. I mean, that's just, and I know a lot of the adults also learned a lot from the young people, and the young people learned a lot from the adults. So the power dynamics are kind of stripped away in an exercise like that. So really powerful.
Right. Great. I'd like to, not fast forward, to hear a little bit about all, it's almost been 2 decades nearly since you served with
Yeah.
us. So, and I know we've touched base a couple times over the years as you've jumped into different interesting opportunities. I was looking at your LinkedIn profile. It definitely emphasizes things like partnership and intersection of different sectors. So I'd love to, not necessarily go blow by blow everything you've done since you've left SCI, but maybe if you could speak in general terms about some of the work you've been doing and in any ways in which you think it might build on things you did at SCI back in the day.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think SCI really opened my eyes to a whole new world I didn't know before. It really gave me the confidence, but it also gave me like the foundational skill sets to go try a lot of different things. I mean, I ended up doing a second year of the fellowship at Boston Cares, where I did transfer some of those skills from SCI. So learning how to coordinate volunteer programs, how to build partnerships, how to communicate with different audiences. So a lot of those different things transferred, but really my time in AmeriCorps, I would say, helped shape my identity a bit. I feel like I was a bit lost after losing my friend in the September 11th attacks. And then in a way, AmeriCorps helped me sort of get a part of that back to me. But after my 2 years in AmeriCorps, I wanted to learn more about, I guess, the field of philanthropy, the field of giving back. And I was fortunate enough to land another fellowship at the Boston Foundation, where I was doing some grant making work around youth-based violence. So it was very much related to the youth work I was doing before, but it was from a different lens. I was doing grant making, reviewing grant proposals, coordinating a funders collaborative. So that opportunity really opened my eyes to another world, the world of grant making and philanthropy. And really one thing led to another. And, I started thinking about my corporate background as well. Well, how can I combine, my corporate background with my social impact interests? And I decided, there's this thing called, corporate social responsibility, CSR. And then I looked into a little bit more, and again, the right doors opened for me, and I was given the right opportunity to go and move to San Francisco, where I became a community relations manager at Charles Schwab, managing their charitable giving program. So managing like matching gifts, grants, volunteer week, and then partnering with organizations. And the one organization that we ended up having a national partnership with was actually the Boys and Girls Clubs of America, which we very closely with at SCI. So like everything was coming full circle.
Yeah,
I was
see that. Nice.
But really, I would say, the last 10 years or so in that CSR space, working in San Francisco, eBay, Schwab, and then eventually moving back east, where I spent a little bit more time, doing that work. But in between, I also spent a little bit of time at the mayor's office in New York City as well, helping to launch a couple of new AmeriCorps programs, actually.
There you go.
So like everything was coming full circle. But really, I would say the common thread in my career is really building partnerships, building programs, working with different stakeholders, and really just jack of all trades, wearing whatever hat I need to wear at the moment,
Mm-hmm.
and just understanding how to get things done, which I actually still think it's one of the greatest taglines, like,
Yeah.
getting things done, because that's really what I do every day. Just try to get things done.
Hey, that's awesome. Living the
Yeah.
AmeriCorps motto every day
Right.
and through these different steps in your career. That's great. Um, you know, just picking up on the thing you were talking about, building partnerships, we have a relatively new tagline that's up above me, the other side up above me.
Cultivating connections.
Yeah, so the first part of that, cultivating connections, it sounds like a lot of what you're doing when you're creating partnerships. Any tips, best practices you would highlight about, for people that are looking to build connections in order to get things done in communities? Some tips you would share from your experience?
Yeah, I mean the it depends on who you're trying to build connections with. But generally, I think any kind of connection I'm trying to build, I think one is, I try to find common grounds.
Yeah.
Whether it's building partnerships with an NGO, with a funder, with um, you know, a government, which we work a lot with currently at my work. So finding common grounds, trying to understand the needs and the problems of the other side. So actually, I find that if you understand the problems that they're dealing with, and you can offer a solution to their problems,
Hmm.
a lot of times it's a great way to strike up a partnership, or at least find ways to help one another. I would say also, in terms of building connections, um, keeping an open mind.
Yeah.
Sometimes you go into a potential partnership thinking, having certain assumptions, thinking you might want certain things out of the partnership, and then realizing after the first conversation that, maybe what you went in with, it's not realistic, or it's not actually what you guys need. And then you find out, like, oh, hey, we can work in this other way. So
Right, right,
that's
right.
really,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's a great point. I'm glad you said that because, yeah, I think when you're prepping for a meeting or something, you think, oh, what's my goal? What am I trying to get out of that conversation? But I like that idea of keeping open to, where's the conversation go? And if you're really trying to
Go with the
hear what
flow.
what they need, that might take you in a different direction. Cool. So, as I said, it's been almost 2 decades since you served with us. And, as I said before we started recording, I think a lot of what we're doing is, if the project names have changed a little at the core, is that youth leadership, is bringing people
Mhm.
together around different community needs. What are your thoughts on, times of change with, you came to us following one crisis. We're now, we've had a few since then,
Yeah.
the pandemic being one noteworthy one. How do you see the work SCI does, our mission? Why is it still relevant and important now in 2022?
Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking about all the different crises my generation, I think, is it Generation X, maybe? Is that what it
Yeah.
is? My generation.
Yeah.
I mean, having gone through 9/11 at the time when we're graduating, and then the financial crisis at the time when, like, our career was about to take off, and then COVID now, like, with, I think, many in my generation, like having kids and families, like it's like all the crises we're hitting at this, like the critical times of our
Mhm.
of our lives. It just makes me think that, at the end of the day, it's really about uh, the community that you're in that's
Mhm.
going to get through some of these crises.
Yeah.
Like, we look at things globally at a macro level, but at the end of the day, it's like your neighbors, it's your friends, it's your families that's going to get you through all these different the tough times. And
Mhm.
so it's so important, I think, to build these bonds
Mhm.
uh, with your community, so that, if something were to happen, or if you need their help, or if you can offer a hand to them, that they're there for you. I
Mhm.
also think that the challenging times we're living in, it's actually, I feel like it's really complicated. Like, things in this world has become really complicated. So
Mhm.
having other people to bounce ideas off, or just to chat like this, just having a
Yeah.
coffee chat.
Yeah.
Like it's reassuring, and it's also just I think it's good for your mental health too,
Hmm.
like so
Hmm.
people don't feel so alone and so scared and so unprepared.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's a great note to conclude on. I think at the end of the day, we do all these projects, but we're trying to, it's those bonds because we do need each other at the end of the day. We are social beings. And I think it's well said that at times of crisis, you realize that all the more so. So Roger, it's been great to catch up with you. And
Likewise.
yeah, this is so good to have an excuse to do that. Anyway,
Oh,
cool. Well,
well, thank you so much, David,
enjoy
for
the
having
rest of
me.
your evening.
You enjoy the rest of your morning. Have a cup of coffee, David. I know it's early there.
I will. All right. Thanks,
It's a
Roger.
lot of fun. Thank you so much, David, for having me.